Now, we're very excited to be joined today by Professor Dr. Asma Ismail, who's the chairperson of Malaysia's Planetary Health Action Plan. And I think that in today's crazy times where the scale of the crisis can make it feel like change is almost impossible, Malaysia's Planetary Health Action Plan offers something that's really unique and valuable, and that is hope grounded in action. And the plan shows that a healthier relationship between people, nature, and the economy is not just an aspiration, but is something that we can really work towards in very concrete and very practical ways. So Professor Dr. Asma has been leading the work on the action plan, and she is a woman of many firsts. So besides being a first female vice university chancellor, she was also the country's first female director general of higher education, the first female president of the Academy of Sciences in Malaysia, and the first female to be the chairperson of Malaysia's qualifications agency. So we're celebrating female leadership today. It's a huge honor to have you here with us today, Professor Dr. Asma, and I'd love to hand over to you to hear more about all of this inspiring work.
Okay. Do I start or Amira is starting? Do I start?
If you'd like to, yeah, no, feel free to, yeah.
Okay. All right. Can I share the slides first?
Yeah. Fantastic. That's working well.
Okay. All right. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good, well, it's afternoon here in Malaysia. It's about 4 p.m. So it's nice to meet up with all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I would also like to thank Marguerite from the Wellbeing Economy Alliance for inviting me to share some of the things that we have been doing in Malaysia towards planetary health and the development itself of the National Planetary Health Action Plan. Let me start by saying that Malaysia is at a critical turning point because as we progress across sustainable development pillars, if you see this graph from the year 2000 until the year 2019, just pay attention to the blue line that I'm showing here. We have shown that from 2000 to 2019, a steady economic growth. All right, because we are seeing here progress in terms of economy, but we find that our science, technology, and innovation seem to be plateauing by 2010. And what we are seeing, however, is that this economic progress that we are now seeing is coming at the expense of the social as well as environmental impact. Because you can see here there is now a decline in the environmental and societal impact. And we have also seen our environmental performance index has also declined as we move throughout the years from 2012 to 2022. So then we say at Academy Science, what is the cost of doing nothing? All right. So by 2019, we find that premature death linked to environmental issues is costing Malaysia USD 15.86 billion, which is basically about 5% of GDP. And between 2005 to 2022, this cost has grown to 161%. So what we are saying now is that the cost of doing nothing is going to be probably greater than the cost of taking action. So and at the Academy, we saw this risk, right? And so what we had done was to write about 4 papers on precision biodiversity, climate change, science outlook, and zoonosis. And all these 4 papers have revealed critical insights into the outbreak risk and the kind of impacts, and therefore there is a need for Malaysia to do something about a forward-looking action plan. So in this aspects or in response, we at the Academy propose for a National Planetary Health Action Plan. And we table that at the National Science Council, which is chaired by the Prime Minister on the 4th of April, 2022. And it got through. And the National Science Council then mandated MOSTI, which is the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, because Academy Science is under MOSTI. So through ASM to actually lead the development of the action plan, grounded, however, in science, technology and innovation, with the central agencies and key ministries, of course, have to come in together. So essentially what I want to explain to you is about the Planetary Health Action Plan framework itself. So we say, what are the principles that's going to guide us as we develop the plan? We got to have some principles, right? So we are saying it has to be humanity-centric because people must be central in what we are making this decision about. STI enabled because as part of academic science, of course, STI should be the enabler. Has to be nature-based. That's what we are also saying. And more importantly, it has to be values internalized. And we are basically working like when we study, when we do scoping or benchmarking, and you're doing this on planetary health, like any other research group, we will be looking at environment and health, on sustainable food, on research and education, on energy transition, on governance, and then we have one more on values, cultural shift of society, behavioral changes, and communication, which we say all these are 6 key areas that we have to look into. And basically, let me explain first regarding the foundation of the Malaysian Planetary Health Action Plan. In terms of humanity-centric, we say it has to be people must be at the center of every decision. Science, technology, innovation must be the one that enable. These are the drivers of transformation. We need to value nature and value the ecosystem as a critical infrastructure for health, security, and well-being. And more importantly, the values that we need to have must be internalized. That means, in our part of the world, spiritual values plays a very important point. Ethics and intergenerational justice in all of our policy and planning needs to be there. And when we say STI as enabler, because it is also something that we need to now have in order to move forward, in order to move the country forward. And we are saying the STI is positioned as the primary accelerator for planetary health. And we're going to do this via data and monitoring because there is a need for us to do prediction and evidence-based decision making. Everything that is done by academic science in order to convince the policymakers, we prefer to use evidence-based, yeah. And we also say there is a need for technological innovation, and this time around, shifting the country towards green use of green technologies. Interdisciplinary research, no more talking about silo. We now need to say science now needs to work together with humanities and social sciences. So we say interdisciplinary research needs to be there. Policy and governance, there is a need to embed STI insights into the national framework, ensuring inclusive, transparent, and adaptive governance. And lastly, we say local and global collaboration. There is a need to do this because there's a need for us to build partnership for knowledge exchange because we are new to this game and there are many people around the world that is now coming in as it is for this particular conversation. There's a need to share knowledge and to have exchange of knowledge, technology transfer, capacity building, especially for the vulnerable communities. So what we are saying is that sustainability without STI will be too slow and ineffective. So coming back to the Planetary Health Action Plan, what we are also saying now is that if we will continue to follow environment, sustainable research, energy, governance, and in 6 key areas, we are no better than what is happening now. Because we are making sure things are still happening in silo. But, moving planetary health, we need to understand that everything is connected to everything else. And so, therefore, if we continue in this kind of mindset, we are no different. So what we are saying now is that we gotta show interlinking between environment, sustainable research, energy, governance, the values, the culture, all this needs to be coming together. They have to be interconnected, or otherwise we're not going to be able to move the agenda. So it's very important that each of the key result areas, the 6 key result areas, are not implemented in silo, and they need to be interconnected to ensure coherence and integration. And the question then is, how do we manage to do that? And that is the idea of systems thinking approach.
Just a kind question to please mute yourself when you're coming in. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Then that is where we say we need to connect all this in a systems thinking approach. And that's how we have the 5 systemic shift. So all these 6 areas, now we say, okay, systems approach, and we have 5. Shift one, strengthen the governance and management of the nation's natural khazanah. We use the word khazanah, which means is a Malay term that describes biodiversity or the environment, right? And shift two is to nurture people to lead a healthy, prosperous, and values-driven nation. Please remember, I use the word values, VALUES, rather than just value, because value will also mean we're talking about money. But here, values is about integrity, compassion, and all that. The third one is we need to now make sure we have planet-friendly business. All right. And the fourth one, effective communication, behavioral, and values mindset. Again, the word values play a very important role in this framework. And of course, nothing can happen unless finance is there. So we say shift five, let's talk about sustainable financing and resourcing planetary health development initiatives. So when we come up with these five shifts, all right, we then end up with 53 strategies and 222 action plan. But to make sure this happen, there's a need for capacity building. There's a need to have some infrastructure in place. So we now say, what are the tools that we now need to operate and monitor the National Planetary Health Action Plan? And this is where we say, let's have a transformational sustainability leadership module, because everything begins with the leader. If the leader's mind is now changing, then there's a need, then the whole organization will follow. So we did this. And we also say, okay, Malaysia does its budgetary every 5 years for the country. We can no longer afford to wait 5 years before we find out what's going on in the country. So we need to now know what is happening real time. And that's how we say, let's use AI and do an impact tracking framework to now make sure we know on the fly what exactly is going on in the country. And in order to make sure we monitor our biodiversity, there is a need for an environmental genomic database framework that we have also now tried to put in place. So, and that is how we created the transformation of Malaysia to contribute to a healthy planet by saying healthy planet, healthy me, and prosperous Malaysia. And all this is part and parcel of how we develop the National Planetary Health Action Plan. And it is not about me alone. It takes about 70 experts in this field from the 6 key areas, from the environment group, sustainable group, the research education group, the energy group, the governance group, and the values, cultural, behavioral change group. So we have about 70 experts involved, and we need feedback, we need recommendations and validation of the things that we now put up as suggestion. So we have about 3,500 over scientists, policymakers, civil society, youth, and business group to help develop the plan. So there's a lot of people involved in creating this, right? And this is another part that is very important as we move forward. Instead of measuring success only through ROI, because everything about business is about ROI. So we say, no, if you now, we need to turn around the mindset of people to talk about ROV, return on values, because if we enforce return of values, we will get return of investment. So that's how we said, okay, let's introduce now an alternative development logic based on return of values, which is a forward-looking measure of success that will give equal weight to environmental stewardship, social cohesion, long-term resilience, and socio-economic growth. And that's how we put all this together for return on values of environment. So therefore, there is a need to protect and restore the natural ecosystems and biodiversity. In terms of return on value for economic, creating resilient, planet-friendly industries and jobs. In terms of social, we want to be able to reduce the health risks, improve well-being, and ensure that no one is left behind, so that we need to also reduce the inequity divide. And in terms of political, there is a need to build accountable institutions, strengthening Malaysia's leadership on sustainability and empowering the local community. So that's what we've done. So in short, the National Planetary Health Action Plan brings all 6 of these 6 key areas together into one integrated framework that is held together by the 5 systemic shifts underlying the logic of return on values rather than ROI, and grounded on 4 foundational principles that I talked about. So to our knowledge, as it stands, the Planetary Health Action Plan is a first among the ASEAN countries and at the moment now first in the world. So again, you may say, right, that is a plan. Okay, how does it work, right? So operational, how do we now put this vision into action? So the Malaysia's Planetary Health National Commitment to Healthy Planet, Healthy Me, and Prosperous Malaysia will embed planetary health. This is very important into daily life, into decision making by policymakers, by vice chancellors of universities, and so on, to ensure every policy, every investment, and innovation supports a future where people and planet can thrive together towards a sustainable and resilient future. So the first thing is about governance, right? If you put the governance in place, things will be in place. So we try to now have Malaysia does have a National Sustainability Council. So that's one way we can attempt to put in the National Planetary Health Action Plan via the council. The other one is to build intelligent systems, as I said, having environmental genomic database framework to strengthen the environmental and health monitoring. Another is to establish a robust impact tracking framework, and another one is to drive, this is very important, no longer ministries working in silo, but having a whole of nation behavioral change supported by transformational sustainability leadership module that hopefully will reshape leadership across public, private, and community sectors. Well, then of course you may ask, what sets the plan apart? I mean, surely a country already have some policies on sustainability. Yes, Malaysia has introduced many sustainability policies over the years. So what makes this Planetary Health Action Plan different is that it does not stand apart from all these policies. It connects all these policies and amplify them. So in the past, I'm sure some of you may be very familiar about this in your own country as well. Everything is implemented in silo. One ministry that takes care of biodiversity will have some strategies, whatever, for biodiversity. Another ministry will take care of energy. Another ministry will take care of health. Another ministry will take care of food. So with this plan, we say, hello, let's break down on the let's break down the silo, align the actions, and make sustainability, sorry about that, make sustainability a shared responsibility across government, business, academia, and society. And of course, it embeds STI as the core and ensuring the plan is not only comprehensive but also systemic, practical, future-ready, and earlier policies, of course, have laid the groundwork, but the plan, the National Planetary Health Action Plan, actually connects the dot, mobilizes STI, mobilizes STI and builds the bridge towards a Malaysia that is more resilient, fair, and prosperous, and hopefully thriving within the planetary boundaries. So the next question is, can this plan actually cascade and reach out to individual? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it takes everyone to be involved. Otherwise, you know, it's just a piece of paper, it's just a piece of framework, it's just a plan. So the success of this planetary health, as every blueprint as you have done in any country, is all about implementation. And on Malaysians truly feeling a sense of ownership over planetary health. Yet the concept of planet, because you can't hold it, you know, you can, of course, you can see the impact of climate change and so on. But, you know, the question that people usually ask is that, do my small action really matter in making sure that the planet, because, you know, someone out there, the neighbor is still burning trash and so on and so forth. So the solution to us at the time, because this is not going to be an overnight thingy, right? This has to be like, there must be a time frame to now make sure this happen. So the solution to us is to mainstream planetary health in education, and it has to be done from the schools all the way to the universities. And the other one is education. The second one is about effective communication that will make planetary health real and relatable to people, because education alone is not enough. It makes people aware, it makes people concerned, but if you ask the question, so what have you done about it? And usually people say nothing, right? Because it's not that they don't want to do something about it. It's maybe they don't want, maybe number one, they don't care. Or the other one is that they don't really know what needs to be done. So this is very important. So that's why we say education alone is not enough. We need a mindset change to now ensure behavioral change. So everyday choices that people do, like reducing food waste, conserve energy and water. When you brush your teeth, stop the tap, for a while and then only turn on the water when you need it, or you start planting trees again, support planet-friendly business, and using public transport. All these may seem small in isolation, but if you multiply that across 32 million Malaysians, they can shift markets, they can cut back pollution, they can lower costs and drive a lasting change, right? So that can possibly happen. Okay, in my last two slides, I would like now to share with you, okay, how did we do it? So what are the lessons I learned, experiences that we have gained so far? And of course, you want to ask, well, show me some of your achievements that you have gotten, all right? So let me share this part. First thing, to the policymakers in the audience, is all about positioning, right? You need to be in the inner circle of decision makers to ensure governance and policy change. So to have your ideas, your voices heard. I mean, you can be in small groups, you can be coming up with and churning reports galore. But if you don't have and you're not part of the inner circle, it's kind of very, very difficult to now be able to get your ideas in. So what is important is that Academy Science Malaysia is a member of the National Science Council, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. And the president of Academy Science, when I was president, I am the National Science Advisor to the Prime Minister and to the country. And therefore, what's very important is that we got to be evidence-based, we got to be credible, and that's why most of the papers submitted by Academy Science will take 1 or 2 years to actually develop, with intensive scoping, background check, and intensive stakeholder engagement and surveys with high sample size to get the people's ideas and recommendations come into the government, right? So all these ideas must be communicated as a potential policy or a new policy for the country. And guess what? All this needs to be done in 10 minutes or you're done. This pitching has to be done in 10 minutes at the council meeting. So you can do 1 or 2 years work, but at the end of the day, it's about 7 slides and that's it. So it has to be evidence-based. What you present has to be highly focused, and what you present must be a doable policy. The next one is, what are the achievements that we've got so far? Currently, mainstreaming planetary health and accessibility in education from primary school to tertiary is one of our biggest achievements, because we think that education is a long-term solution. So to mainstream planetary health, it has to be part of the curriculum from primary to tertiary education. And if you want to make it sustainable and you want to make it as part of the curriculum, it's got to be part of the blueprint for education and higher education. So fortunately, I was the chair for National Planetary Health Action Plan, and the government also, Ministry of Higher Education, made me also the chair for the development of the higher education blueprint from 2026 to 2025. So basically, it's a 10-year thingy. And upon completion of the National Planetary Health Action Plan, I got the researchers involved in the Planetary Health Action Plan as also part and parcel of the higher education blueprint. So that means the ideas from the planetary health was actually transferred where relevant to the development of the higher education blueprint. And this, Alhamdulillah, was launched on January 20th, 2026. So now this is on, ladies and gentlemen, from preschool, school, primary school, all the way to the universities in Malaysia. So to ensure that all university curriculum has planetary health and accessibility, I roped in the Malaysian Qualification Agency, which is involved in terms of quality and accreditation of all of the university's curriculum. So to date, all of the university's curriculum in Malaysia, whether it's from public or for private, must address planetary health and accessibility as part of the MQA framework. So to ensure that's not enough, You got to make sure that all this is in place. The next thing is to ensure a sense of ownership for the development of that blueprint. So we have steering committee that is now at the blueprint, chaired by the Minister of Higher Education himself. And the members of that steering committee are members of Minister of Higher Education top management, which is like the Director General and stuff, so to make sure that the blueprint is implemented. And we have academics, students, industry, politicians, etc., giving their feedback. And also in the steering committee, the minister put in relevant government agencies and think tanks and thought leaders of the country, because if they like it, it's easy to now make sure that all things goes through. It's a lot of work, a lot of defense needs to be done, but like I said, no pain, no gain, right? So basically, we make sure that the influencers of the country, the thought leaders of the country are happy with the blueprint, and then only it can be accepted easily. The next one is effective communication. How you communicate cannot be a one size fits all. It depends on who is the audience, right? So if it is to the public, the communication needs to be de-jargonized in order to communicate in the language that the people in the community understand. And sometimes we may not do a very good job of it. That's how we have the faith leaders, because, a lot of us are religious. So basically, faith leaders come in to help communicate the views from the religion point of view that supports for planetary health. And of course, leaders to ensure ethnic preference. Of course, we have many ethnic groups here in Malaysia as well. To the educators, the researchers, and the students must be evidence-based. And you got to show them why this matter, because otherwise they are not convinced. And we have to now provide rational and doable recommendations. And what's important to the researcher and making sure that they are moving and promoting for planetary health development and innovations, we have now introduced mission-oriented research with funding to actually now shift the mindset of all the academics towards impact rather than just outputs. Yes, before we were like moving in the ranking, as you know, 49 universities in Malaysia are in the QS rank. But the thing is, that is all about output. Now we need to shift the universities now towards impact. So we tailor a research. Why mission-oriented was acceptable by the National Science Council and of course from the other ministries as well, is that the research is now tailored to the needs of the target clients. And that means mission-oriented solutions now become more relevant, more sustainable, and this is more culturally appropriate, impactful, and sustainable. And the way we design the solution is with the community rather than for the community. So the mission-oriented concept essentially to all the politicians, because it's going to be relevant, because this is what the community wants, it will also get the votes for election. So this is another important point, that how you present it, because at the end of the day, with the decision makers, the policy makers, they will always have the back of their mind, will this get the votes, right? So this is very important for us to address as well. So to the politicians, the policy makers, to the government and the industry, we have to verify the stakeholder needs. That means what does it do for the industry? And of course, what is the economic benefit to the country? This needs to be there. Of course, the second thing is, will it buy votes? And how now do we balance and support planet-friendly business with profit? Yeah, with profit. So that's why we are introducing the idea of return on values that will now bring in the ROI. But if you start with ROI, you may not end up having an environmental change, and that's how we continue the way it is. So we need to now show to them, how do we balance between ROI and ROV? And I can't explain this a little bit more, because at the moment that I'm talking now, Academy Science is organizing for an idea exchange session with members of the industry on exactly this topic. How do we now bring in planet-friendly business and make it as important, and presenting it to the Ministry of Economy, so that now it becomes part and parcel of the policy for the country. And the other one that we are now seeing, now that we are moving this way, and now we find that Ministry of Health is also now moving for the country One Health. So and this is happening in a big way. So that's good because that's part and parcel of planetary health as well. But each ministry now doing their own thing to now be able to move and hopefully work as one, because all the policies in the country now is a whole nation approach. So and with this concept, we are getting more and more ministries to be involved. So lastly, what I want to say is that implementation is as important as the plan, all right? Because what we say before, education is not enough. It creates the awareness, but it does not transform the system. So you need a mindset change to create this behavioral change. Then only transformation can take place. And to attain the mindset change, you need to move from just awareness to now empowering the people. So that's what education does. It empowers the people with knowledge, with confidence, and with skills to take action. But there's only so much of empowerment that you can do, because sometimes you do need structural change. And for that, this is where you need to move now from empowerment to now collective action by means of policy change. That's where we need the policy change to be there. I mean, like, for example, you can say, okay, take care of your teeth, oral health is very important, everything, everybody is cool with that. But what if there is no dental clinic within 100 miles from where you are? So how now do you undergo oral health, taking care of oral health? So there's a lot of policy change that needs to happen as well. So this is why we say collective action and the success of the Planetary Health Action Plan will require a whole nation approach. So it has to go from awareness to mindset change to behavioral change, and also then we see the structural change. So with that, I was given about 30 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. And I guess I'm open now to questions and hopefully be able to answer them.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly comprehensive in terms of both the presentation of the policy, but also the implementation side of things. And there's been lots of comments in the chat about how inspiring this has been, and yeah, what a great model it is too. So we've got 20 minutes for questions. So I'm seeing some questions come up in the chat, but also you're more than welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to ask your question directly to Professor Asma. So please feel free to raise your Zoom hand and we can get you to ask your question directly if you're happy to. And otherwise I'll resort to the chat. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, sure, Robert. Should we start with you? Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Asma. It was fantastic. And there's a lot there. I could have asked you 100 questions about 100 topics, but what caught my eye was you mentioned the data and monitoring. So the prediction and decision support we need with AI tools, which makes me think of important feedback loops. I'm interested to learn how far are you with that, or do you need any support with that? Because there are, of course, many possibilities these days. Thanks.
Okay, this is the request that we are, okay. When we do the National Planetary Health Action Plan, we were funded by Ministry of Science and Technology. So to now, we have developed the leadership modules, but we need a lot more funding to now develop this AI tool that I talk about, the impact tracking and whatnot. We have presented to the ministry already. This is what we need to do. We have gotten all the AI experts to now come in and show us the framework and so on. So we are waiting for the funding to now be able to move to phase 2 level. Yeah, so we have not developed that as yet, but so far the ministry is okay with that idea. Now is a matter of funding to make sure that this becomes reality.
We had a question from Zhaoting in the chat and also Redeemer. So Redeemer, do you want to ask your question, and then Zhaoting, if you want to ask yours as well?
Sure. Thank you. Firstly, thank you so much, Professor Asma, for your wonderful talk. I work in climate science communications, and we're of course working towards the same mission of enacting policy change to support climate action. So I wondered, what advice would you have for climate science communications in today's day and age, where science is also at its core also under attack? If you had any thoughts on that.
I think on the climate change and whatnot, we are seeing change in the way people are handling their everyday choices, right? So I think the government has done a lot of communication on this aspect, and like I said, you need to use in some of the communication that we do, if it's for the Gen Z, the words that we use must be relatable to the Gen Z so that they understand what this is all about. And to make sure that this happen in the university, where majority of the young and the youth are, is part of the curriculum to have community engagement. And this is where the concept of climate change, the concept of especially for medicine, what is the root cause of the problem? It's not enough. That's what we are saying now. It's not enough for the doctors, the training doctors, to now say, okay, for our diagnosis, these are the problems. To put out a diagnosis, and then how do we undergo treatment? We say, hey, hold back, ask one more question. What is the root cause of the problem? Then when they have the root cause of the problem, then it opens up. Now, what are the climate change problem, the determinants that can now result in you having cancer, for example, lung cancer? What is the cause of that lung cancer? What is the environment that the patient is staying in? So that matters. So this is how we now, when you learn something like this, then you will understand more about why we are facing all these problems, right? So in the community engagement, which is a must for all university students, we don't have to worry about it, because now the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, they're very into making sure the environment is safe for the future generation. So by doing community engagement, which is a must, now they can understand more. I mean, a lot of the times they just go to the beach and they say, okay, let's clear the beach, so that all this rubbish is now thrown. Now we say, why is this rubbish here? Why do we see the plastic? What is so important about plastic? What is it doing to the people? So this is where the movement now from this young group with their ideas and whatnot is making the change. And you can see from the proposals and whatnot they're doing, we are seeing that change happening among the young generation. About the public, a little bit more difficult, because like I said, the public comes from varied background. So therefore, communication must be, how do I say, a lot of us are very into religion. So the faith leaders actually are explaining planetary health from the religion point of view, why environment need to be kept clean, why the earth is here for the future generation. All that is there, especially in Islam, is all there. So it's how it is being communicated to the various groups. That to me is very important, because if you just have a one size fits all kind of communication, okay, that's okay for the mass, for the public, but not necessarily it will change their mindset of every individual that's there. So that's why we are making this change in terms of communication. Like, for example, we have different ethnic races in Sabah, in Sarawak, and therefore some of the things that the ethnic groups are practicing are actually sustainable, but we don't know that because we keep following the West, right? So now we bring that up and say, hey, what Sabah and Sarawak is now practicing is actually wonderful. It is already moving sustainability. Like, for example, the Tagal system to clean the river, is done by the people in Sabah. And they will make sure that parts of the river, some parts is for fishing, some parts you do not touch to allow the fish to grow. Only this part can you now touch and allow for fishing and whatnot. And there was like a huge growth of salmon and all these other fish there. So, when you start doing this, you bring out the natural practices that we have done. That's going nature-based, to the natural practices that we have done. And now we appreciate that a little bit more because this is what we have been practicing, but we have forgotten. And that's what academic science does to put it in videos and whatnot to show and communicate with the people. This is the way one needs to now move forward to take care of the river, to take care of climate change and all that. So I don't know whether I answered everything about what you wanted to know, but I think bottom line is not about one size fits all communication. It has to be targeted to the different groups because different groups have different ideas and different preferences and how they accept planetary health, which is rather abstract, to a lot of people, it's going to be different based on the different groups.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, super comprehensive around values and how values can be communicated to different people, right? We often have the common values, but how different people will receive them, depends on cultural background or religious background, etc. So yeah, really, really tangible. Xiaoting,
But Amira, to
yeah.
make sure that happens, values internalized is part and parcel of the higher education blueprint. So we make sure we cover all angles when we're doing the blueprint so that now the younger generation of Malaysian will appreciate values rather than value. Right? Value will be about commodity. Of course, consumer value will eventually talk about taking care of society, but it's very important that we have values internalized. Then taking care of the environment is au natural. It's no longer something that you're forced to do, or it's like, okay, that's what we need to do. So that's important that you train this. And the beauty of it is that all of this is from preschool to the primary school, all the way to the universities. We didn't have that before. Accessibility was not, it was just a master's in accessibility, that kind of stuff, But now it's going to be all Malaysians coming into the school system, the education system, from preschool all the way to universities will now have this. But they will be in the staggering, they will learn and get more complicated as they go forward. So can you imagine if they now, I look forward, I don't know whether I'll be alive, but I look forward to the 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if all these students coming into the universities, when they're doing research, they already understand about being planet friendly, being green technology, being all this, right? They will probably solve a lot of problems faster than we are now doing, because now all the problems that they have will be already, how do I say, inundated into them. They understand that this must be done in a planet-friendly manner, not to make sure that all grant must be planet-friendly. It's like au natural for them to do that. And for all the policymakers listening, it's a hard time for me to now be able to, why, sometimes to the point I keep saying to myself, why do I have to defend for planetary health? It should be something normal for people to understand because we are destroying the planet with the Anthropocene state. We are destroying the planet. Why can't we understand that? We are seeing the effect of climate change. We are seeing all this effect already. Why does it need more and more defense for this to happen, right? So I'm hoping, pray to Allah, I'm hoping that, in the future, when all of these people become politicians and whatnot, it will be like, okay, this must be done. This is part and parcel of our decision making. This is part and parcel of how we do procurement, so that green technologies equipment are being bought. It should be a natural thing to do. The question, however, is how long does it take to make this change, right? And that is, and whether the planet will be able to wait for us to undergo this change. That is another matter altogether.
Thank you. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Incredible to see both approaches happen at the same time too. I have many questions, but I will go back to what we have in the chat. We've got a couple of hands, but I just wanted to address Xiaoting's question. So the question is, to what extent have these visions and approaches been integrated into the 13th Malaysia Plan from 2026 to 2030, which seems to center around GDP growth targets?
Yeah, basically, I have to say there must be a Malaysian asking that question because only a Malaysian would know about the 13th Malaysia Plan. Planetary health is now part and parcel of the budget. Okay, so that's good. Okay, and second thing, because the blueprint of higher education have the planetary health, that means whatever funding is given now to higher education will ensure implementation of this. So, and then because now we have a lot of other ministries also coming in with their own efforts at changing planetary health. Because once the word planetary health and sustainability is there as part of the RMK 13, then different ministries will now come in with their strategies and whatnot to now make sure this happen. So Amira, what I want to say is that at the end of the day, that word planetary health and sustainability must be there as part of the factors to be considered for the Malaysian RMK 13 budget plan. So once that word is there, before if that word was not there. So if that word is not there, then any budget that you request will not take place. So now that that word is there, grants will now research, because mission oriented is now approved. So meaning to say now grants will be made available, and the priority of the grant now will be towards having planet-friendly business or planet-friendly innovations, solutions that are planet-friendly. You can use whatever word you want, but as long as it's planet-friendly and sustainability is a key word, that will also be able to drive change in the country. So that's how you start to integrate, because like I said, sustainable funding resource is very important. I mean, you can dream about a lot of things, but if the finance is not there, it's not going to move. So that's why first, very important, whoever is listening, that word must be there in the first place in the bigger agenda of RMK 13. So the subset of what is now being funded under RMK 13 will now come later. So that will be another level of fight to make sure that that happens. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we have two hands up too. So Die Lisberg and then Basma.
Yes. Hi, I'm Dennis. And thank you for your presentation. It was quite impressive, and I really share your vision on it should just be the way we think. That would be quite nice. And I would dream that this would also happening in Europe and in Denmark. And going back to what you said at a point about the lessons learned, you said, well, it's good to be in the inner circle of governance and those that are in the decision power. And I think we are a lot that hope to get there. And the problem is, how do you get there? What was convincing them, or what was their reason to actually go into this journey?
First of all, there are a lot of academies around the world. I was a part of the board of governors for Inter-Academy Panel, and I find that there are 150 academies, science academies around the world. So when I was talking about the Malaysian Academy of Sciences, it was a surprise to me that most of the academies are not in the inner circle, right? For Malaysia, the Academy of Science is part of the inner circle. So I guess that is a first good luck that we have. And the second good luck thing is that the president of the academy is the Prime Minister's science advisor. So basically, if we fail we can go in and convince him earlier before the National Science Council to now brief him properly so that he understand the full thing, then we go in with the paper. Then I guess, it's like a double making sure that this thing goes through. So, and very important that we maintain that credibility, that we do not give ideas that will not work. And that's why I say you take 1 or 2 years before, and we have many projects that needs to that needs to be made known to the government, that needs to change, right? So we have many projects headed by many different senior fellows of the academy, and it goes through our STIPAC committee, which is the committee to make sure that the policies that we come out and the evidence that we show is credible, evidence-based is credible and doable, so it makes sense why we are making this recommendation. And very important is that people know. That's why I said I got 3,500. Education Blueprint, I got 8,200 people to come in and give ideas. Why? It's very important that we get a lot of people to come in from different perspective, from industry, from academia, the quadruple helix, they all come in, right? Why? Because they know academic science listen to them. See, you can come from any other agency, but maybe you don't have the inner circle. So if they now come to an academic science call for a meeting of stakeholder engagement, then we get all the feedback. So when we get the feedback, then we put in together and we have an analysis that we do. So now, sometimes people say in different languages, but they mean the same thing. So at the end of the day, you need to put them into these baskets of gaps that we need to address. And then we come up with a recommendation to address these gaps. And very important, sir, after we have done the recommendation, we validate. We call again all these other agencies that have not seen this, and they now say yay or nay to some of the recommendation that we made. So after we have gone through all that, that's when we present to the National Science Council. So that, when we say our ideas are doable, we mean what we say. And they will ask, from where do you get all this, So we say, okay, how many thousand of people that we have now engaged? So it's not like a matter of n equals 100 or n equals 500 sample size. It's a large sample size that we do. And I mean, that has been academy. You asked the question, how did academic science get in there, to be in the inner circle? For a long time, we were not part of the inner circle, but how do I say? We built our credibility, right? We built our credibility so that the government now begins to see that academic science, the fellows are giving ideas that make sense, that now can make that change in the country. So you got to build your agency first, because not all academic sciences around the world are in the inner circle of the government. So build that credibility. Once we have done that, then we become an asset to the Ministry of Science and Technology, and we continue to gain success. And the Ministry of Science also saying, oh, okay, not too shabby, and we can have more of your ideas. And the Ministry of Higher Education also sees us. Ministry of Economy says, now we have 14 ministries that work with us to say, okay, what are your ideas? Let me hear them. And they use some, and the ones that are successful, they now put that as part of their strategic plan to move RMK 13 for the country. You understand what I'm trying to say? So we are like everywhere, but credibility, evidence-based, doable policy needs to come out from. And that's how all of the papers that we do for the different ministries, they come into the academic science STIPAC, which is a committee that will now take care about whether we're making sense, what we're doing, and all that, so that everything is streamlined before it goes out. So it's not like anybody's plan just go in straight to the ministry. No, that is part and parcel of the way Academy Sciences Malaysia work. Not all academies work like that. I'm not sure, but we do that way in order to maintain our credibility.
Thank you, Professor Asma. So I'm going to just do two questions together just to make use of the last few minutes. So there's two questions in the chat that are similar to one another, and then
No, I think Basma has not asked her question.
Yeah, so the questions in the chat I just wanted to refer to were similar to what has just been raised, but more to do with a public people and engaged citizens to support implementation of the action plan on a community level. So how are people being encouraged to be involved in the implementation on a local level? And then Basma, do you want to ask your question as well? So we take both together. I just want to make sure that everyone's had a chance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amira, and thank you very much, Professor Asma. my question is quite related to this last one, and it was more about, but slightly more about the bioregional movement and whether that is active in Malaysia. So more of the like grassroots effort to get back, get the society and the economy to bring it back in alignment with nature, or second the society and the economy to nature, because without nature we can't survive. And as you said, Professor Asma, we don't know if the planet is going to wait for us to get our act together. So, but just to say, so for like bioregionalism was my question, but have you considered potentially giving nature rights in Malaysia, like other countries have? Is that something you see as necessary? And lastly, is there an opportunity to connect with you separately? I come from Jordan. I am based in Denmark, so I'm a bit removed, but would be good to connect with you separately, because there's no time here, if possible.
Yeah, we connect with nature a lot. So that's why I said the Tagal system in Sabah to preserve the river is going back to nature. So there's a lot of other things that we have done as well in terms of, that's why I said shift one is about preserving our khazanah. Right, our khazanah is our biodiversity, because that to us is the biggest asset that we have. We take care of it, the rest will all take care by itself. So that's why it's number one in terms of how we do things in the country. But taking care of our biodiversity or khazanah, we also use STI enabled. So that we are moving forward, although there are practices that will maintain the nature, but there's also the knowledge from the science and technology that can help us preserve that nature better. And how the science and technology can work with nature to now move this. And taking care of the community, there's a question on that. As I said, community engagement is to make sure that the students go into the community. And when we do community engagement, we are talking about knowledge, not knowledge transfer, but it's a two-way street. We actually empower the community by educating them, and so that when we leave the community, they're able to survive. All right, and this is where we empower the community via knowledge, via teach them to use the fishing rod rather than give the fish. That's what I want to say, and that was the job of all the universities now, because it's now part and parcel of the curriculum. So that is what we do, and don't forget, our mission-oriented research already insists that we must now go in and find out the target client or the community, what is their problem, and then come back to the lab and design the solution to that problem. And that's why I say work with the community rather than for the community. We used to be kind of having, maybe arrogance is the word, that people with PhD know better, and then this is the best thing since sliced bread, and we go in 2 years later, nobody's using the innovation that we have created for them. So now under mission-oriented research, there is a need to now do a two-way street. We now need to learn, unlearn, relearn, co-learn, and co-create. That is the essence of mission-oriented research. So that is now being taught again. So basically learn, unlearn, even the way we are doing research in the country, because now the emphasis is on impact. And if that is the case, then this is the way we want to go forward with that. So having this mission-oriented that has been approved, that now becomes the requirement from all universities to do research, and all the research in the country is now moving towards that. To make sure that happens.
Amazing. It's so hard to end this session. There are so many questions in the chat. People are asking, can we stay on for longer? But unfortunately, we have to close at the hour. What we will do is to collect all of the questions in the chat. And maybe if it's okay with you, Professor Dr. Asma, I can run them past you to see if there are any additional insights you might like to share. I think the engagement has been amazing. I think it shows the interest in this topic and the inspiring work that you're doing. So a huge thank you for all of the important insights that you've been sharing with us today. And it's so energizing to know that change is actually possible. And then, of course, all of you in the audience, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If you are a policymaker and you'd like to receive the invites to these sessions directly into your inbox, Amira will be posting the link to the Wellbeing Economy Policymakers Network in the chat. And then if you'd like to learn more about other examples of how governments are taking active steps towards a wellbeing economy, then please do have a look at the free online Wellbeing Economy Policy Design course, where you can see a lot of different examples. And we're working on a case study, of course, on Malaysia's Planetary Action Plan as well to include in there. So thank you a lot for being here with us today, and we're very much looking forward to reconnecting with you all soon.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your support.
everyone.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Very much.